Jack had been walking for hours. His boots sank slightly into the damp, strange soil of the alien forest. Every step released a faint glow from the ground, as if the earth itself was alive and watching him. The air was thick, heavy, and smelled faintly sweet. Tiny floating lights drifted in the air, glowing pollen. He kept his helmet visor down, knowing the spores here could put a human into a dream so deep they might never wake. The forest was called the Forest of Whispers. He had heard stories from Molly Sige, when Molly Sige and leaves a rich, long-lasting color. Knowing the spores here could put a Molly Sige, so Molly. Molly Sige, my Molly Sige, Molly Sige, we Sige, with Molly Sige. Molly Sige, my Molly Sige, press a read. It is it, but by my Molly Sid. I may inside me inside zudat, kai si li like a psa. Traders at the outpost, some said the trees could speak into your mind. Others said the forest lured travelers into its heart and never let them out. Jack didn't believe in stories, but he respected danger. His hand stayed near his sidearm, and his scanner rested in the other. The deeper he walked, the quieter it became. There were no birds, no animal sounds, only the faint creak of roots. Shifting under the soil, his scanner beeped once, a faint warning. Something was ahead. But the reading was strange, part heat, part energy, part life. He slowed his pace. Then he heard it. A voice, no, more like a whisper inside his head, faint, almost fragile. It wasn't words at first. Only a feeling, a pull. He looked around. Trying to locate the source, the mist was thicker here, glowing softly in shades of green and blue. The whisper came again. This time, a word, help. Jack's muscles tensed. It wasn't his imagination. The voice had a tone, young, scared, desperate. He moved toward it, stepping carefully over twisted roots that rose from the ground like the backs of sleeping animals. His scanner beeped. Again, warning of toxic plant life. The reading showed venom levels high enough to kill a human in minutes without proper gear. Through the mist, he saw movement. At first, he thought it was an animal caught in the undergrowth, but as he got closer, he saw her. She was small, barely up to his chest. Her skin shimmered like wet jade, catching the faint light, long silver. Hair spilled over her shoulders. She was tangled in thick black roots. They coiled around her arms, legs, and torso, pulsing like veins. The roots dripped with a dark green liquid. His scanner instantly identified its venom. Concentrated and deadly. The girl's breathing was shallow, and her golden eyes met his, wide with fear. She tried to speak, but coughed instead. Her voice was barely a whisper. Please. Jack moved closer, keeping his eyes on the roots. T had seen plants like these in old mission files, soul strangler roots. They didn't just poison. They drank the life energy from whatever they trapped, slowly, painfully, until nothing was left. These roots were wrapped so tightly around her that he could see her skin bruising under the pressure. He tried pulling at one of the vines, but the moment his glove touched it, the root hardened like metal. The girl flinched in pain. A faint hiss came from the plant, and more venom oozed down toward her skin. Jack stepped back, thinking fast. He could use his laser knife, but cutting into the vine might release a cloud of toxic spores. The girl's breathing was getting weaker. He could see her fingers twitching like she was trying to keep hold of consciousness. The forest around them seemed to notice his presence. The mist shifted, moving as if it had a mind of its own. The whispering in his head grew louder, not from the girl, but from the trees themselves. It was like they were warning him, or maybe mocking him. Then, from somewhere deep in the mist, he heard another sound, a slow, dragging movement, heavy and wet. Something large was approaching. He glanced. Over his shoulder, the shape was still far. Just a shadow among shadows, but it was coming closer. his instincts told him it was a predator. And predators here didn't come for a friendly visit. He looked back at the tiny alien girl. Her eyes were still locked on his. There was fear there, but also something else, trust, as if she already knew he was her only chance. Jack tightened his grip on his knife. The predator could wait, but the venom couldn't. He leaned down. Speaking through his helmet comes even though she might not understand. "I'm getting you out." Her eyelids fluttered, and she gave the smallest nod. The roots pulsed again, tightening. A drop of venom slid from one vine onto her shoulder, and her skin sizzled where it touched. She let out a weak cry. Jack felt a rush of urgency he had maybe minutes before she either passed out or worse. The dragging sound behind him was louder now, closer. He could almost hear the slow inhale of a creature tasting the air. He ignored it, focusing on the roots. His mind raced through every survival trick he knew. He needed something to plant. Feared more than blades, he thought about fire, heat, maybe electricity. Anything that could weaken the vines without killing the girl. But first, he had to move fast, faster than the forest. Faster than whatever was coming for them through the mist. And as he made his choice, he could feel both the forest and the predator closing in. The real danger wasn't just the roots. It was everything else waiting for him to fail. Jack's hands moved quickly. His eyes locked on the thick black roots that coiled around the tiny alien girl. The forest seemed to lean in around them, as if every tree and vine was holding its shade. Its breath, his scanner's warning lights flashed red. Venom levels were rising fast. The girl tried to speak again, her voice weak and strained. Help. Can't breathe." Her words were broken, like each one cost her too much strength. Jack crouched lower, looking for any gap between the vines and her skin. But the roots were wrapped like iron chains, pulsing with dark green liquid. The venom wasn't just on the outside, it was flowing inside the vines. Spreading through their twisted network, he knew if even a single drop entered her bloodstream, she wouldn't survive long. Her skin had already started to lose some of its shimmering glow. Turning pale under the strain, he reached for his laser knife again, hesitating. The last time he touched the vines, they hardened instantly, sealing themselves tighter. This wasn't a simple plant hit. Reacted to danger like an animal. He needed to outsmart it, not just fight it. The whispering sound returned, faint but unsettling. It wasn't the girl this time. It came from the roots themselves. The sound was almost like words, but low, slow, and heavy. He shook his head. Focusing, this was no time to lose his grip on reality. Suddenly, the girl's body jerked. A root had tightened around her chest, and she gasped sharply. Her eyes rolled slightly. Jack's pulse spiked. He had to act now. "Hold on," he said firmly, though he wasn't sure she could hear him. He pulled a small tube from his belt, a heat flare. He clicked it on, and the tip burst into a brilliant, searing light. The warmth rolled over the vines, and immediately, they twitched. Pulling slightly away from her skin, Jack saw his chance. He slid the laser knife between two of the roots and activated it. A thin red line of heat cut into the vine's surface. The reaction was instant. The vine hissed like a snake, spraying droplets of venom into the air. Jack turned his helmet away, letting the suit's filter handle the toxins. The girl whimpered softly, but he could see her chest move a little more freely now. One root was partially severed, but the others were tightening. It was as if the plant knew it was losing control of its prey. The dragging sound in the mist grew louder. Jack could hear it circling now, slow and deliberate. The predator was watching, waiting. He didn't have time to deal with it tiff. He turned away. The girl would be gone before he fought it off. He pushed the flare closer to another vine. This time, the vine recoiled harder, pulling back from her arm just enough for him to slice through. A sudden rush of green venom splattered the ground. sizzling as it touched the glowing soil. The forest gave a strange groan, like it was angry. The girl's lips moved, and he leaned in to hear. Fire. Good. Roots. Hate fire. Her voice was barely a whisper, but it confirmed what he was thinking. She was a healer. She knew the forest secrets. Jack grabbed another flare from his pack, lighting it quickly. He placed one near her legs and one near her torso. The heat forced the vines to loosen. The predator in the mist let out a low, rumbling growl, clearly unhappy with what was happening. Sweat dripped down Jack's back, despite the suit's cooling system. His hands ached from gripping the knife and holding the flares steady. The girl coughed again, this time drawing in a deeper breath. Her golden eyes flickered with faint light, but the roots weren't giving up easily. They began to pull her backward, deeper into the soil. Jack reacted instantly, grabbing her arm. And bracing his legs, the forest floor shifted under them, and the ground opened slightly, revealing more roots below. "No, you don't," Jack muttered. Pulling with all his strength, his muscles strained, the vines tugging back with unnatural force. He shoved the flare directly against the thickest root. The smell of burning plant filled the air, harsh and bitter. The vine writhed violently, then snapped with a wet crack. The girl gasped loudly, almost falling forward into his arms. Jack caught her and pulled her close, checking her quickly. The vines had left deep bruises and small burns on her skin. But she was still breathing. Her fingers curled weakly against his chest. He didn't have time to celebrate. The predator's shadow was closer now. Moving in and out of the glowing mist, it was long, sinuous, and its eyes burned with a cold green light. It stayed low, waiting for the right moment. Jack lifted the girl carefully, one arm under her legs, the other around her back. She was light too. Light. He could feel how fragile she was. He kept the flare burning in his other hand as he turned away from the snapping, writhing remains of the roots. The forest was silent again, but it wasn't a peaceful silence. It was the kind of silence that comes before a strike. The girl's head rested against his chest, and he could hear her whisper something in her language. The words were soft, but urgent. He didn't understand them, but he understood the tone. Danger was still close. Jack took one slow step, then another. Keeping the flare between them and the predator's shadow, the mist swirled. And the dragging sound began again. This time following them, the rescue wasn't over yet. And if he made even one mistake, neither of them would leave the forest. Of whispers alive, the mist shifted like a living thing, curling around Jack and the small alien girl in his arms. Every step he took sank into the soft, glowing soil, leaving faint blue footprints behind. The air felt heavier now, carrying a low vibration, as if the ground itself was humming with warning. Behind him, the dragging sound came again. Slow, deliberate, and much closer. Jack didn't look back immediately. He knew the predator wanted him to turn, to lose focus. That's how creatures like this worked. They let fear eat you from the inside before they struck. The tiny healer's head rested against his chest. Her breathing was shallow, but she was still conscious. He felt her small fingers twitch against his jacket. She whispered something, the words too soft to understand, but her tone was urgent. Jack tilted his head toward her. "Say it again," he murmured. Her golden eyes opened just a little. "It's hunting us," she breathed. Her voice was fragile, yet certain. Jack adjusted his grip on her and kept walking. The flare in his hand flickered, its light cutting through the thick green mist. Shadows shifted along the edges of his vision, always just far enough to keep him guessing. The predator wasn't rushing, it was pacing them, waiting for the right moment. He'd seen tactics like this before, not from alien beasts, but from skilled human hunters back on Earth. Predators who were patient were always the most dangerous. They didn't strike until escape was impossible. The forest grew tighter. Trees leaned in with twisted trunks, their black roots arching above the ground like skeletal ribs. The path ahead narrowed to a tunnel of vines. The mist pooled inside like smoke trapped in a bottle. Jack stopped, scanning. His visor showed faint heat signatures, but they were moving, circling around him. The girl's hand clutched weakly at his jacket. "Don't stop," she whispered. Jack nodded and stepped forward into the tunnel, keeping the flare high. Something shifted in the mist ahead. A long, dark shape slid across the path, low to the ground. The glow of its eyes pierced through the fog, two green points, unblinking. Fixed directly on him, the predator was bigger than he'd expected. It moved like a serpent, but its body was thick and armored with overlapping black scales. Its head was triangular, its mouth lined with thin, needle-like fangs that dripped with a pale liquid. Jack didn't need his scanner to know that liquid was venom. The creature didn't rush. It swayed slowly, side to side, testing him. Jack raised a flare, and the light reflected off its scales. The predator hissed, a sound that rattled in his chest. The girl whispered again, "It won't leave. It knows you're weak." Jack smirked faintly, though his pulse was racing. "Then it's about to be disappointed," he muttered. The predator slid forward, its movement almost silent except for the faint scrape of scales against roots. Jack stepped back slowly. He couldn't run, not with the girl in his arms. Running would only trigger the chase instinct, and in this forest, speed belonged to the predator, not to him. His eyes darted to the trees, looking for anything he could use. The predator's gaze followed his every movement, studying him as much as he was studying it. Suddenly, the creature lunged, not fully, but just enough to test his reaction. Jack swung the flare in a wide arc. The heat made the predator recoil slightly, but it didn't back away. Instead, it began circling, forcing Jack to turn with it. The girl coughed weakly, and Jack could feel her heartbeat against his chest. It was fast, almost panicked. He needed to get her out of here, but the tunnel of vines meant the predator could block him at any moment. Then Jack remembered the roots. The soul strangler vines had feared fire. Maybe this predator did to war. Maybe it feared something else in the forest. He glanced at the thick vines above, remembering how they dripped venom. If he could make the predator cross under them, maybe the forest would do his work for him. He shifted his weight, stepping sideways toward a thicker section of the tunnel where black roots hung low. The predator followed, still swaying. Its eyes never left him. Jack stopped under the roots, holding the flare high. "All right, come on," he muttered under his breath. The predator lunged. This time it was real. A blur of scales and teeth shot toward him. At the last second, Jack ducked sideways. The predator's head slammed through the hanging roots. The vines reacted instantly, wrapping around its neck and face. The creature hissed in fury, thrashing violently as venom from the roots dripped into its open mouth. Jack didn't wait to see if it would break free. He ran, gripping the girl tightly. The tunnel seemed longer now, the mist thicker, but he kept moving. The sound of the predator's struggle faded behind them, replaced by the faint, eerie whisper of the forest again. The girl's eyes met his for a moment. "You tricked it," she said softly. He gave a small smile. "Had to." The tunnel opened into a wider part of the forest, where faint light filtered through glowing leaves above. Jack didn't relax. Not yet. The predator was strong too. Strong for vines to hold forever. He knew this was only a temporary escape. The real danger was still out there, and the forest was far from done with them. But for now, they had a few precious minutes, and he intended to use them. Jack didn't slow down until the glowing mist thinned enough for him to see more than a few meters ahead. His breathing was heavy inside the helmet, Every step, a careful balance between speed and keeping the tiny alien girl steady in his arms. Her skin was still pale, her eyes half closed, and her breaths short and uneven. He stopped beside a cluster of twisted trees, lowering her gently against one of the thick trunks. "Stay with me," he said softly. Her golden eyes flickered open just enough to meet his. "The venom. It's still inside," she whispered. Jack nodded. He knew she was right. The vines might have been cut, but their poison was already in her system. He quickly scanned her with his handheld device. Red readings flashed across the display. Her pulse was weak, her oxygen levels dropping. Jack's jaw tightened. If he didn't do something soon, her body would shut down. He pulled another flare from his pack, its bright light cutting through the shadows. Around them, the forest seemed restless. Leaves shivered despite there being no wind. Roots shifted faintly under the ground. It was as if the forest itself was aware of what he was doing, and it didn't like it. He knelt beside her, examining the last of the black vines still stuck to her skin. They had retreated slightly when he'd burned them earlier, but the thickest strand was still wrapped around her waist. The vine pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. Jack didn't hesitate. He brought the flare close to the vine. The heat made it shudder and loosen just a fraction. That was enough for him to slide the laser knife underneath and slice through it. The vine split with a sickening crack, releasing a small spray of green venom. It hissed as it hit the ground, burning small holes in the glowing soil. The girl winced, but didn't cry out. Jack quickly cut away the last strands around her legs and arms. Each cut made the forest groan softly, like it was feeling the pain of its own vines, just as he freed the last piece. The ground beneath them trembled. Jack's head snapped up. His visor picked up movement, fast, heavy, and coming straight toward them. He knew that sound. The predator was back. Jack grabbed the girl and pulled her to her feet. She was weak. Leaning heavily on him, "We have to move," he said firmly. She nodded, but stumbled with each step. The mist ahead shifted, and a long black shape slid into view. The predator's green eyes burned in the dim light. Its jaws opened slightly, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth dripping with venom. Jack realized the vines hadn't stopped it for long. If anything, the attack had made it more aggressive. He tightened his grip on the flare. Its light flickered, nearly burnt out. He cursed under his breath. He didn't have time to light another one before it closed the distance. The predator lunged. Jack yanked the girl behind him and thrust the flare forward. The creature recoiled, hissing, but didn't retreat far. It paced in a slow circle, blocking the only clear path through the forest. Jack's mind raced. Fire had worked before, but his flares wouldn't last forever. He glanced at the forest floor, thick roots everywhere, pulsing faintly. An idea sparked in his mind. Risky but possible. "Cover your eyes," he told the girl. She obeyed without question. Jack knelt quickly, jamming the flare deep into one of the larger roots. The vine screamed a high-pitched sound that made the air vibrate. Instantly, the surrounding roots convulsed, releasing bursts of toxic spores. The predator froze, watching the violent reaction. Then, in a sudden rush, the roots shot upward like whips, striking at anything nearby. One lashed across the predator's snout, spraying venom directly into its eyes. The creature howled in rage and pain, thrashing wildly. Jack didn't waste the moment. "Run," he said, grabbing the girl's arm and pulling her forward. They darted past the blinded predator. Weaving through the whipping vines, the forest groaned and hissed around them, but it was too busy attacking the predator to stop them. They broke through into another clearing. The mist thinner here. The girl collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. Jack knelt beside her, scanning her again. The venom readings were still high. She wouldn't make it far unless he found a way to neutralize it. She looked up at him, her voice faint but steady. "There's a pool. Ahead, it can heal." Jack didn't hesitate. "Which way?" She pointed weakly toward a narrow path lined with glowing flowers. Jack lifted her again, the flare now nothing more than a smoking stick. He quickened his pace, every sense alert for the sound of the predator returning. The forest was quieter now, but he knew that silence could change in an instant. They moved through the narrow path, the glowing flowers brushing against his suit, leaving streaks of blue light in the distance. He could hear the faint trickle of water. The girl stirred slightly in his arms. "Almost there," she whispered. Jack's eyes locked on the faint glow ahead. He pushed forward, the trees parting to reveal a small, crystal-clear pool surrounded by smooth stones. The water glowed softly, casting light across the grove. It was calm here to calm. He set her down carefully by the pool's edge. "This is it." She nodded weakly. "The water. We'll draw the venom out." Jack helped her slide into the shallow water. The glow wrapped around her like a second skin. Her eyes closed, and her breathing began to steady. For the first time since entering the forest, Jack let out a slow breath. But his relief was short-lived. Somewhere behind them, deep in the mist, the predator roared, louder than before. It wasn't done with them yet. And Jack knew the fight wasn't over, not by a long shot. The soft glow of the healing pool lit the grove like a lantern in the dark forest. Jack kept his eyes on the narrow path they had taken, listening for any sign of movement in the mist. The tiny alien healer floated in the shallow water, her eyes closed, her breathing slower now. The shimmering light of the pool wrapped around her, pulling the venom from her body in faint green threads that vanished into the water. For a moment, it felt almost peaceful. The sounds of the forest were muted here. The air was fresher, the mist thinner. But Jack's instincts refused to let him relax. He knew predators didn't give up easily, especially not one that had already marked them as prey. A low vibration rolled through the ground. Jack's head snapped up. The girl's eyes fluttered. "Open. It's coming," she whispered. He didn't need her warning. The distant roar they had heard before was now followed by the heavy, wet sound of something forcing its way through thick roots and vines. Jack stepped to the pool's edge. Crouching beside her, "Can you move?" he asked. She sat up slowly, her skin glowing brighter now, but her body still trembled. "Not fast. But I can walk." Jack nodded. "Then we walk." He helped her out of the water, supporting her weight. She was stronger than before, but far from ready for a fight. That meant it was up to him to keep them alive. The roar came again, louder now. The trees around the grove shivered as if something massive was moving through them. Jack scanned the area, looking for any exit other than the path they had come through. His visor picked up two narrow trails leading away, one sloping upward into a ridge, the other diving deeper into the mist. The girl pointed toward the ridge. "Higher ground," she said softly. Jack agreed. Predators liked to attack from above, or the sides if they were above it. The creature would have fewer angles. They started up the ridge. Moving as quickly as her recovering body allowed, Jack kept his weapon ready, the faint hum of its power cell a comfort in the eerie silence. The mist thickened again as they climbed, swallowing the light from the grove behind them halfway up. The sound of the predator's movements changed. It was faster now, less cautious. The ground trembled with its weight. Jack could hear branches snapping and roots tearing. It wasn't stalking anymore, it was charging. "Hurry," Jack urged. The girl tried to move faster, but the slope was steep, and her legs still shook. Jack didn't hesitate. He lifted her into his arms again and pushed forward. His muscles burned, but he didn't slow. The ridge ended in a flat ledge overlooking a drop into a swirling sea of mist. The trees here were twisted into strange shapes, their branches tangled like claws. Jack set her down and turned, scanning the ridge they had just climbed. The predator appeared at the base, its green eyes glowing brighter through the fog. It moved with terrifying speed, its scales scraping against stone as it climbed. Jack's mind raced. There was no time to run if they tried. The predator would overtake them in seconds. He looked at the ledge beneath their feet. The stone was unstable, thin cracks running through it. An idea sparked in his head. Risky, but maybe their only chance. "Hold on to me," he told the girl. She didn't ask why. She simply grabbed his arm and held tight. Jack stepped back toward the edge. Planting his boots firmly as the predator closed the distance, Jack raised his weapon and fired into the rock below its path. The blast shook the ridge, sending shards of stone flying. A deep rumble echoed beneath them. The predator slowed for a moment, sensing the shift, then the ground gave way. The section of the ridge between them crumbled. Collapsing into the misty abyss below, the predator leapt to avoid the fall, its body striking the ledge just a few meters away from Jack and the girl. The impact cracked the stone beneath them. Jack pulled her back as the ground split wider. The predator roared, claws digging into the rock. Trying to pull itself up, Jack fired again. Aiming at the edge beneath the creature's grip, the rock shattered, and with a final, furious hiss, the predator tumbled into the swirling mist below. Its shadow vanished, swallowed by the forest. Jack stood still for a moment, breathing hard. The girl's grip on his arm loosened. "Is it gone?" she asked. Jack looked into the mist, his visor showing nothing. "For now," he said. Though he knew predators like that had a way of coming back, they moved away from the unstable ledge, deeper into the ridge's winding paths. The girls' steps grew steadier with each minute, but Jack stayed close, ready to catch her if she stumbled. The forest was quieter here, but the silence felt like a warning rather than safety. They didn't know how far they'd have to go before they found true safety, but one thing was certain: this wasn't over. And somewhere in the depths of the Forest of Whispers, the predator might still be hunting. The ridge path wound downward again, the mist thinning as they descended. Jack's boots crunched over loose stone and damp soil. His visor scanned constantly. But for the first time since entering the Forest of Whispers, there were no red danger. Readings only faint life signs, soft and harmless. The tiny alien healer walked beside him now, still a little weak, but her steps were steadier. Her golden eyes scanned the shadows as if she knew exactly where they were going. Jack noticed she hadn't asked for a break since they left the ledge. "You know this place," he said quietly. She gave a small nod. "There's a grove ahead. Old and safe. The forest doesn't hurt there." Jack didn't trust the word safe in a place like this, but he followed. The air here was different, cooler, with a faint sweet scent like crushed flowers. The trees were taller, their branches weaving together to form a green canopy that glowed faintly in the dim light. The constant rustling and distant growls of the forest were gone, replaced by a deep, almost peaceful silence. They stepped through a narrow arch of roots, and Jack stopped. The grove was unlike anything he'd seen on this planet. A wide, open circle of grass lay before them, dotted with small pools of glowing water. The grass itself shimmered silver. Under the canopy's light, large, strange flowers, the size of his helmet, swayed gently without any wind. The girl walked ahead, her bare feet silent against the grass. Jack followed slowly, still scanning, but the readings were clean. "This is the heart," she said softly. "The forest was born here. No predator dares to enter. Not even the roots will cross." Jack knelt beside one of the pools. Touching the water with his glove, it was warm and smooth, like liquid crystal. His helmet sensors showed it was clean and rich with minerals unknown to human science. "This is where you were trying to reach before the roots caught you," he guessed. She nodded. "I came for the moonflower." She pointed to the tall flowers swaying nearby. Their petals glowed softly, pulsing like they were breathing. "One petal can heal 100 wounds," she explained, "but it only blooms under the moon's light." I was waiting when the roots attacked. Jack's eyes narrowed. "Oh, so something didn't want you to take it." The girl's gaze darkened. "The forest doesn't like change. The healers who come here never leave without a fight." He glanced around the grove, feeling the hair on the back of his neck rise. It was peaceful. Yes, but it was the kind of peace that felt watched. He could sense it. The weight of unseen eyes. The girl knelt at the base of one of the moonflowers. Her small hands brushed the petals, careful not to damage them. She plucked a single one. And the flower shivered before folding closed. Jack felt a strange shift in the air, like the forest had just taken a deep breath. "You felt that too?" he said. The girl nodded. "The grove will protect us. But only while we stay within its circle. If we leave, it will call the forest again." Jack didn't like the sound of that. "Then we'd better rest fast." He set down his pack, checked his remaining supplies, and recharged his weapons. Power cell, his mind kept going back to the predator. He didn't believe it was truly gone. They drank from the glowing pool. The water smooth and almost sweet. Jack felt the tension in his muscles ease, and the girl's color returned fully to her skin. She even smiled faintly for the first time since he found her. "You saved me," she said quietly. Jack shrugged. "Couldn't just leave you there." The moment felt almost common till the flowers swayed harder. As if in a sudden breeze, Jack looked up sharply. There was no wind. The girl's face grew serious. "Something's outside the grove." Jack moved to the arch of roots they had entered through. Beyond it, the mist had grown thicker again, shifting like a living thing. A shadow moved within it, low and wide. Circling the grove, the predator, "It can't enter." Jack asked quickly. The girl shook her head. "No." "But it can wait." Jack cursed under his breath. The grove wasn't a fortress, was a trap. If the predator waited outside, they could never leave without facing it. He glanced back at the girl. "How far is the edge of the forest from here?" She hesitated. "Half a day's walk." If nothing stops us, he checked his weapon again. His supplies wouldn't last forever. "And staying here only delayed the fight." "We leave at first light," he said firmly. The girl looked at him, fear and determination in her eyes. "Then we'll have to run faster than the forest itself that night." Jack sat awake while she slept near the glowing pool. The flowers swayed slowly now, their light dimming outside the grove. The predator's green eyes glimmered in the mist, unmoving, watching. Jack didn't blink. His hand stayed on his weapon. He knew tomorrow would decide whether they left the forest of whispers alive or not at all. The grove was still when the first pale light filtered through the glowing canopy. Jack stood at the edge of the archway, visor on, weapon ready. The predator's eyes no longer glowed in the mist. But he knew it hadn't left. Creatures like that didn't give up. They waited. The tiny alien healer stirred, stretching slowly. Her color had returned. Her steps steady again. She walked to his side, her golden eyes calm but focused. "It's time," she said. Jack gave a single nod. They stepped out of the grove together, and immediately the air changed. The sweet scent vanished, replaced by the heavy, damp smell of the forest of whispers. The mist swirled around their legs, curling higher with every step. The forest's whispers returned, faint at first, then louder, as if the trees were aware of their escape attempt. Jack kept her close, his eyes scanning constantly. His visor picked up faint movement behind them, then to the side. "It's here," he muttered. The girl glanced over her shoulder, but saw nothing. "It's waiting for us to tire," she whispered. They moved quickly along the narrow path, weaving through twisted trunks and arching roots. The forest seemed determined to slow them. Roots shifted under their feet. Vines reached down from above. Twice, Jack had to cut them away before they could wrap around her. An hour passed, and the ridge from yesterday came into sight. Jack's heart sank slightly. He knew this place, the ledge where they had escaped. The predator before now stood between them and the safer outer paths. If the creature had learned from their last fight, it would be waiting here. The girl stepped ahead of him suddenly, her small hands brushing over the glowing flowers along the ridge. "What are you doing?" Jack asked. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she plucked 3 petals. Holding them gently. "Trust me," she said. They reached the ledge, and Jack's worst fear became real. The mist parted, and the predator emerged from the shadows. Its scales glistened with venom, its green eyes burning brighter than before. It had been waiting all night. Jack raised his weapon, but the girl touched his arm. "Let me try first," she whispered. She stepped forward, her voice low but clear. Speaking in her language, the petals in her hands began to glow. Brighter and brighter, the predator froze mid-step, its head tilting slightly. It hissed, but it didn't lunge. The girl kept speaking, her words flowing like a chant. Jack realized she wasn't just talking. She was commanding. Slowly, the predator lowered itself, its muscles tense, but its eyes no longer fixed on him. They locked entirely on her. She tossed one glowing petal onto the ground between them. The predator's head darted forward, sniffing it. The glow seemed to soften its movements. She stepped back toward Jack, her breathing fast. "It will let us pass." But only once. Jack didn't hesitate. He took her hand and guided her across the ledge, keeping his weapon aimed just in case. The predator followed them with its gaze, but didn't move when they reached the other side. The girl dropped the second petal onto the ground behind them. The predator moved toward it, and Jack used the moment to push deeper into the forest. They didn't stop until the mist began to thin, and the trees grew wider apart. The outer forest air felt lighter, fresher. Jack knew they were close to the edge. But before they could take another step, the girl stopped. She held out the last glowing petal to him. "This is for you," she said. Jack frowned. "What's it for?" She stepped closer, placing it into his palm. "A debt of life," she said softly. "You pulled me from the roots. You faced the predator. You carried me to the grove, in my people's law. I now owe you more than thanks. I owe you my service, my skill, my protection." "Until the debt is repaid," Jack shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. I didn't save you for payment." Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "It's not payment, it's a bond. If ever you are in danger, call my name, and I will come, no matter the distance." He looked at the glowing petal in his hand, slight, warm against his skin. For a moment, he didn't know what to say. Finally, he tucked it into his jacket. "All right," he said quietly. They reached the forest's edge just as the sun broke through the clouds, lighting the alien landscape beyond. Behind them, the mist rolled like a living thing. The predator's roar echoed one last time from deep inside the forest of whispers, but it did not follow. The girl glanced back once, then turned to him with a faint smile. "The forest will remember you," she said. Jack gave a small, wry grin. "Good, let it." Together, they walked away from the mist, the sound of their steps fading into the open air, carrying with them a story neither would forget.